All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame number 23. Amber Heard's lawyers say verdict is a setback for women and other, let's say, media reactions to the verdict.
Well, we don't necessarily have to cover other media reactions, although I think that Elaine Bredehoft is now on tour for her 15 minutes of fame,
Oh
as it
boy.
were. Yeah. She's
Just
gonna get
like
as
the
much
TMZ
attention.
guy predicted, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And it's like I'm pretty sure she's done other appearances, but this I think was the first one after the trial. And the funny thing is that the verdict doesn't mean that this is necessarily over. I think Depp's fight is over, but when it comes to the actual narrative around whether or not he's a so quote unquote wife beater, the corporate media has decided he's guilty, and they aren't going to budge on that. So what they're going to do is they're going to continue to promote this idea that he is actually guilty. He got away with it because of institutional bias that favors male victims, or sorry, male perpetrators of domestic violence. And they're going to just keep promoting this narrative until he dies. And
Yep.
what they're going to try to do is going to try to outlast public opinion until at some point public opinion will
People
fall off.
Yeah,
People
people
will
will
forget
stop
about
pay
it.
attention. They'll move on to
They'll
something
stop paying
else.
attention. They'll move on, and the only thing that'll be left will be the media narrative on this issue. It's the only thing
Hmm.
that's going to be left being published. There's the only thing that's going to be left that you can look at historically, and they're going to try to outlast the people who realize the truth as a result of watching the public trial, the trial being publicized. So I thought we would take a look at how the narrative is now going to be spun and how they're going to continue to torment and abuse Johnny Depp for the audacity of being a male victim of domestic violence. And anyone who disagrees with that assessment, I invite you to explain to me what would have happened, or I invite you to disagree with the following thought experiment. Imagine Amber was Arnold, and Arnold said, I don't know what my hand was doing, babe, but I didn't punch you, I hit you. Imagine that. It would have been over on day one, and Arnold would have been canceled, and he wouldn't have been believed. It wouldn't have gone this far. And there's
Yep.
nobody who can honestly argue that that isn't the case. That if Amber was Arnold, he would have gone no further with his allegations that Johnny was abusive, gone no further in the media spotlight. It would have been over day one. That's it. No pass
Hmm.
go.
Hmm.
This whole saga would have been over day one. The moment that recording surfaced. So anyway, let's should we just get right into it, or should I do some
Yeah.
business? I think I should. I'll
Well,
do the
I,
business.
I I guess you should do some business,
All right,
and
I'll
then
do
we'll
the
just
business.
get into it.
I'll do the business. Okay. So if you want to send a message that's uncensored, please go to feedthebadger.com/just the tip. It really helps us out if you go there because it's the most direct way to support us. Rumble is okay. It only takes 75%, although I still can't figure out how to get it out of Rumble, like whatever we're getting through our rants. So it's a little bit, but and YouTube takes like 50%. So if you want to make sure we get the full benefit of whatever you want to send us, go to super or feedthebadger.com/just the tip. And as a bonus, it will not be seen by YouTube or PayPal, and you won't have to be scrutinized. You won't be put on some kind of FBI watch list. Um, because it'll just go directly to us and we're the only people who see it. So once again, it's feedthebadger.com/just the tip. And I mean that for that was a joke. I don't think anybody's doing anything criminal or worthy
No,
of
no, of course
any
not.
kind of scrutiny.
But I
All
do
right.
think that there are probably like ways that the feds are watching what people post. So I mean, but
Mhm.
they can't do it to us. So feel free to you know, get edgy if you wish.
Oh yeah, a little more edgy than
A
YouTube
little,
and
yeah, a little bit spicier than YouTube.
like mentioning any kind of not family friendly stuff.
Hmm.
Uh,
We don't know what YouTube standards are because they're always changing. So
this
why
is
take
true.
the risk? Yeah, it's in a constant state of flux. So why take
Mhm.
the risk? Just send us
Why
a
take the
tip
risk?
through just the tip, and then you know that you're giving us the money and not a company as evil
That's
as Google.
censoring you.
Yeah, that's also censoring you while using it for, I don't know. They're probably giving some of the money to people doing terrible things to the Uyghurs or something. So why not just give it all to us? I'm just saying Google is evil.
Oh man. Okay, off.
No,
That
I think a lot of people say that about Google,
yeah.
but
Well, they say don't be evil, and it's
yeah,
like you
well, they
invite
used to. They used to. They
they
stopped
dropped that.
saying that. Yeah,
They
you can't
dropped it.
call them hypocrites now, because
No.
they've officially stopped using the phrase "don't be
So they're
evil."
no longer Google
No.
no longer says don't be evil. They backed off of that.
Yeah, they were like, that's a bit of an extreme
That's a
statement.
bit of a high bar. Maybe don't be too evil, or maybe
Yeah,
just be a little bit
don't
evil.
let
Maybe,
everyone know you're doing it.
yeah,
Keep it
they'll
under
only be
wraps.
evil on alternative days,
Yeah.
on a day that's only be evil on days ending with Y.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, all right. So let's go ahead and what am I going to start with? Is this the New Yorker thing, or should I jump to something
No. Just
else?
go to Ellen. Uh,
I hope it's
goodness.
not one of these Washington Post things, is it?
Oh
Because
no.
yeah, I would need an
I'm
archive
saving
link.
that for something else. No.
Oh,
No. The video that I sent you. Remember?
the video.
Ellen Brand.
Yeah. Elaine.
Bredehoft. Yeah,
Um,
Elaine.
all right,
Sorry,
hold.
I know an Ellen,
No,
so
it's
I'm gonna.
okay. Here it is. This is
Yes.
from the Today Show.
Mhm.
Okay. Exclusive. Savannah Guthrie talks to Amber Heard's attorney Elaine Carlson or Charlson Bredehoft
That's the
following
one.
Johnny Depp's legal win. So let's take a look at this.
We are joined now by Amber Heard's attorney, Elaine
Excitement.
Bredehoft. Good morning to you.
So
It's
she
good to
can't
see
just
you.
let this lie. She has to
First
continue.
question, how is Amber
gotta
doing? We saw
continue
her
this.
hearing that verdict. It took a long time to read. It was a sweeping verdict for Johnny Depp. How did she handle it?
All right. I like how
Wow, this is critically
the
important.
interviewer is already setting up all of the sympathy they can muster. And you know what's really funny? Some YouTubers that have been reporting on this, even though they supported Johnny Depp, are concluding the mainstream media hates Amber Heard. They're actually making the claim. There's a video I can probably look up later on by a channel called Nerdette's Newsstand, which was heavily involved in like following the trial, and she was clearly on Johnny Depp's side. And at the and now she's saying, "Oh, the media hates Amber Heard." And I'm like, no, they don't. Maybe maybe some of like the well, I don't know. I haven't really seen it. I mean, the legacy
Yeah, I haven't
media,
seen it
the
either.
corporate media, no, they have either reported it objectively because they don't have a choice because what happened, or they were sympathetic to Heard's side, or they were saying, oh, it's not even worth reporting on. They're both pieces of garbage. Who cares? It's just bread and circuses and all of that. But I haven't seen like, from the mainstream media. No, I haven't seen that.
No. Okay.
From
Well, look at this. I'm going to give some of the titles from because I've been looking into the actual media response to this by the corporate media. And here's some of what they're saying. Like just looking at the titles. Okay, I gotta find them. I have
it's all good.
New York publishes the Johnny Depp Amber Heard verdict is chilling by Jessica Winter.
Appropriately
Okay.
named Ice Queen.
Yeah. Okay, and Time published an article by Nicole Bidera entitled Depp versus Heard reminds us that the legal system is still stacked against survivors, which implicitly says that Johnny Depp is the one who's an abuser and Amber Heard is the survivor.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd say it's explicit, but yeah.
And the Washington Post, not happy with the original defamatory article, publishes something by Charlotte Proudman, And oh man, it goes in this article. It says we've lost before, but this one hurts like an open wound. We saw tired misogynist methods used again and again to discredit a
Oh
woman
my
trying to stand
God.
up for her rights. Okay, is that hateful towards Amber? You know,
No.
and let's see what else I
Don't
can
forget
find.
the Guardian article that was entitled "The Amber Heard Johnny Depp Trial Was an Orgy of Misogyny."
Oh
And
yeah, and then you sent something to me.
yeah, I'm not sure if that's real because I thought it was, and then maybe the author changed the
Yeah,
headline.
changed it.
Yeah, but I couldn't find an archive of it. So, but the headline, as I saw it, said something about how it's the female Holocaust or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, well, we don't know for sure if that's accurate,
But
but
we
here's
don't
the
know for
Rolling
sure
Stone.
but it is funny that because I could
Men
see a Guardian feminist saying that. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's possible. That's definitely a Poe. So Rolling Stone, men always win. Survivors sickened by the Amber Heard verdict.
Oh my God,
And
hilarious.
then there's the BBC article in which they allege that Johnny won because his lawyers darvoed. That is deny allegation, reverse order of
Victim and offender. Yeah.
victim and offender. Yeah, and it's like, so again, BBC is saying that despite the finding, Johnny Depp is still the abuser and Amber Heard is still the abuse victim. So I'm at a loss of where mainstream media or establishment media is demonstrating a hatred towards Amber Heard.
Yeah, I think that there's a bit of a desire to be like on the side of the popular opinion. So it's basically like people trying to, say, oh, look, everybody hates her, but it's like, it doesn't, like, first of all, I don't hate her. And I don't think that people should. I think that they should be happy that justice was done, and that's basically enough. The other thing too is that I think that
I
yeah, go
honestly
ahead.
get secondhand embarrassment for her.
Yeah, well,
Continue.
shame is a powerful tool, but yeah, I think that there are some people who they really want to feel like they're on the right side of an issue, so they might be inclined to see bias in favor of their perspective in the common parlance, so that they don't feel like they're in some loud minority. But the truth is, for one, it doesn't really matter if your position is popular. What matters is if your position is correct. And if it isn't correct, it doesn't matter if the whole world agrees with you, you're still wrong. Exactly. It doesn't change anything. Exactly. So, I don't think people should be concerned, but then there is sort of like a social cachet. And I think that people like Nerdette, who were basically saying, oh, look, the mainstream media hates Amber. And they showed like a video clip of Megyn Kelly, who was talking about the case. But Megyn Kelly doesn't work for the mainstream media anymore. She does her own thing now, separate, so and plenty of people in the independent journalist sphere or they're just commentators or advocates like us. They're talking about this and they're on Johnny's side. Like, but that's not the corporate media. That's not like what you're going to get if you turn on the boob tube. So if anything, you're probably not going to hear much at all about Johnny Depp, to be honest, but because they've moved on, they're moving on to the next thing.
It's just they're making their cap on this. They're essentially going to be they're essentially saying, well, reality doesn't exist, only media narrative. Now let's all move on. That's what's and this is one of the reasons why I feel like it's important to keep talking about this, at least for a little bit. It's because the media will refuse to actually acknowledge what that verdict meant.
Right.
Because
and they're not
decided what happened, and it will not be swayed from that. And and I've seen this with all kinds of other stuff, because on this channel I've spoken out against media before in other circumstances, because I have experienced being I experienced a mean girl getting me kicked out of a convention and then lying about me to the press. I experienced mainstream media picking up on those lies because those unfounded falsehoods, because they fit a narrative that they wanted to promote, and then just signal blast it across Western Canada. And I've also seen it happen in other circumstances. I called out the Boston Nazis. I don't know if anybody
Mm-hmm.
remembers this a while ago, but the
I do.
mainstream media stirred up like almost like tens of thousands of people by making them think there were Nazis in their, I guess, a Central Park area in Boston. And the Nazis was like a Indian American senatorial candidate and a bunch of hippies from the Church of Weed. And the only
Mm-hmm.
reason that they stirred them up against them was because they were pro free speech, and a bunch of supposedly white supremacist groups were like, "Oh, we're going to support that rally." And the rally itself had nothing to do with that, and they explicitly told them, "Yeah, please don't be part of our rally." And the media just went whole hog, and they ended up sending tens of thousands of people against like 12 people who were like, "Legalize weed."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what the heck? And when I saw that, I was like, the media can distort anything at this point. They can
Yep.
call
And they
anything
do.
and have so many people believe it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just it seems like this endless arduous process of just scraping away media credibility, one lie after another. So I want to bring attention to this. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, the mainstream media, the establishment media, the legacy media, the corporate media, whatever you want to call them, once again, they're insisting that people ignore evidence before their eyes to engage in the dance of nuance and agree with them and their
Yep.
appraisal of reality, even though it has
Yep.
nothing to do with reality. And
Yep.
one of the main ways that they do this, that they enact this upon people, is they appeal to female victimhood. So we have all watched the trial to various degrees of scrutiny. We've seen the evidence. And most of us who are sane know that if Amber was Arnold and Arnold admitted to hitting his wife in a recording, that would be it. It would be over. It would never have gotten this far.
Yeah.
And we've watched the evidence. We've seen the evidence that both sides have presented. We've come to a conclusion based on the evidence, like the jury did, while maybe handing Amber Heard a bone based on a technicality, based on actions that Johnny didn't even take. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, this verdict, as arrived at through process of law and due process, it could harm women.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we should ignore it, or we should not consider it an act of justice done. We should consider it some horrible new kind of misogyny that will destroy women, or
Yep.
will make it more difficult for women to come forward when they're abused or harmed. It's
Yep.
like, this is what they always do. They always appeal to harm to women, to lie about reality. And the reason why they do this is because we have this instinct to protect women, because they are the future of any particular group, a community, a tribe, a nation. If you don't have babies, you don't have a future, and women make babies. So there's this impulse to protect, to provide for women and make sure that they're taken care of. And you can see this in statistically, people prefer to provide and protect for women. So they tap into that instinct and they recreate reality using it. And what's actually heartening for me watching all this is how many people are actually pushing back and saying, no, no.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is heartwarming. Yeah, that is heartwarming. All right. So shall we continue? So anyway, I just wanted to set up that, today, I guess that's the name of the channel. It's like a morning news show. They are already like setting Amber Heard up as, someone who at the very least was like unjustly treated. So let's see what her lawyer says.
One of the first things she said is, I am so sorry to all those women out there. This is a setback for all women in and outside the courtroom. And she feels it, and she feels the burden of that.
Well, knowing the case and knowing the law, as you certainly do, it favors the
No,
defendants.
Oh my God.
That's not what that's doing. That's trying to take what she's facing and saying, well, all women are facing it. That's not taking on a burden for herself. It's trying
No.
to insist or trying to appropriate the desire to protect and provide for all women, or that instinct for herself, to use it for herself. She doesn't care about all women.
No, of course not.
If she did, she wouldn't abuse them.
Yeah, exactly. Got a super chat from Senior Sticks for $2, and he says Amber Heard will still be taken care of by another. Yeah, well, that's why I'm not too worried about her future. I think that she's going to be fine. I know that people are saying she couldn't possibly pay back that money. There is probably someone or some organization or nonprofit, maybe Time's Up, for example, and they may give her the money to do this if she agrees to do more advocacy. I mean, she may not get a lot of work as an actress, but she's going to be fine. Somebody's going to take care of her. I'm fairly certain of that. So,
okay, I just want to mention, because we did sort of get 2 super chows, but they didn't go through. Great Indoors and let me see what's going on here. Great Indoors and another individual who recently just sent $5. Looks like it's in sort of a limbo. You might want to consider sending again, or there might be something up with the blog. So just let's I'll keep an eye on it for you guys.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat saying Elon Musk might go to bat for her. That's possible, but I don't know. I mean, he dated her and now he's not. We don't know the conditions of their breakup, but I wouldn't be surprised if he realized what kind of person she was after being with her for a while. And if he's been watching this trial, he probably has learned, it's potentially possible he learned more about her that he didn't know, because they weren't really together for very long. But it doesn't really matter. Is it? We'll see. We'll see. But I don't know. I don't see that happening. I don't think Elon's just going to throw $7 million at Amber Heard because they used to date. She might call him. She might have tried to reach out to him. But I feel like he's probably just like ghosting her right now. Sorry, I'm busy with Twitter. But I don't know. So I guess we'll see. All right. Let's keep going.
Like Amber Heard. Are you stunned that the jury essentially rejected her story?
Well, really what happened here is it's a tale of 2 trials. Johnny Depp brought a suit in the UK for the same case, and the burden of proof was easier for him there. The son had to actually prove that it was true, and the court found there, and we weren't allowed to tell the jury this, but the court found that Mr. Depp had committed at least 12 acts of domestic violence, including sexual violence.
All right, pausing it there.
Yes, but they didn't allow his evidence into the court.
Yes.
Okay, so they basically just. And did they find that Johnny Depp committed those acts, or that there was substantial enough evidence, aka her testimony, to have an actual article based on that? Like, if he isn't allowed to submit his evidence, how can you say that's a fair trial? And the funny thing is that when she says it was a harder trial in the UK, and yet he made it work, he did it in Virginia. What's the real difference here? I guess that she's going to get into it.
It's the submission of Johnny Depp's evidence, which wasn't allowed in the UK. They're going to invoke the UK trial as often as they possibly can as well. This is naturally a tactic they're employing, at the very least, to confuse people who aren't following it very closely. Be like, well, if he lost in the UK but won in the United States, well, how did that happen? And they're not really going to look into it. And these people are not going to explain, the details of why these things turned out differently. There was a lot of sketchy shit going on in the UK trial that I wouldn't have expected, but there was just a lot going on that was off. And Depp won the Virginia one. But of course, because the UK one happened, they're going to ride that into the dirt. They're going to constantly bring up, well, he technically lost a trial, because that's how they're going to do, which proved that he was a wife beater, right? And so that supports the narrative
against Amber. So what did Depp's team learn from this? Demonize Amber and suppress the evidence. We had an enormous amount of evidence that was suppressed in this case that was in the UK case. In the UK case, when it came in, Amber won, Mr. Depp lost.
But here's the thing.
Oh, but they demonized Amber in the court. I think Amber did that to herself. Oh, you mean with the audio clips of Amber, like, you know, like emotionally abusing Johnny Depp and telling him, "Go ahead, Johnny, tell them that I, Johnny Depp, a man, am a victim of domestic abuse." Is that what you mean by demonizing her?
Well, I think what she means is there was one, okay, as far as I can tell, there was two pieces of evidence that were thrown out because they were considered to be hearsay. Or one piece of evidence, and that was one of Johnny Depp's employees said to Amber, or admitted to Amber, that Johnny Depp cried when he said that he had kicked her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was dismissed as hearsay because it was Amber relaying something someone else had said, or
Yeah.
sorry, or was it? It might have been that. But anyway, it was dismissed as hearsay. There was also evidence that was dismissed on Johnny's side. For example, the recording of that included the doctor that was seeing both of them, or treating both of them, or involved with both of them somehow, when Johnny was glassed by Amber and had his finger severed. And
Yeah.
all of that testimony is hugely damning towards Amber, and it was excluded. I think it was excluded because of either recording laws or the fact that the doctor in question had died, so couldn't give his permission. Anybody who's been following that aspect closer, please give me a heads up. So it's not like the judge just excluded aspects of Amber's evidence. There was exclusions on both sides, and the people who bring this up constantly, I asked them to show me evidence from Johnny's side that was let in on the same grounds, but let in despite being considered hearsay. So what I mean by that is they are concerned about this evidence by Amber not being let into the trial because it was alleged, it was said to be hearsay, and that was sustained, so it was removed. So what I'm asking for is evidence that Johnny's side presented evidence and then Amber's lawyer said, well, that's hearsay, and then the judge still let it in. And I have yet to see that. So you can say that Amber had all of this evidence that was let in, but if the judge ruled this this can't be considered because of these legal issues for Amber's evidence, and then did the same for Johnny's evidence, then how can you say that it would have, like, this trial is wrong, is what I'm getting at. It's biased towards Amber if Johnny's evidence had to live up to the same standard. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
there's this bar that both parties' evidence has to live up to.
Yeah, they had a bar and it was higher.
They had a bar and it was
Yeah.
higher than some of Amber's evidence.
Yes.
But Johnny's evidence, they have, and everybody who's asserted that, oh, the evidence was excluded on Amber's side has not brought any evidence that didn't get up to that bar on Johnny's side wasn't also excluded. And you have to actually prove that. And this is what this lawyer would have to prove to get a genuine appeal, is that the judge didn't exclude Johnny's evidence on the same grounds that she did exclude aspects of Amber's evidence.
Mhm.
And none of the people who are supporting this conjecture have actually, I don't even think they've considered that. They've simply said, well, Amber's evidence was held to a standard, a legal standard. Therefore, this trial is wrong. It's like, well, no, that's not how it works, because Johnny's evidence was held to the same standard. Like, we can bring in all kinds of. I'm sure there was mountains more evidence on Johnny's side that would have fallen into hearsay or by Amber's lawyers, or they would object to it as hearsay, and then the judge would rule on it. There's all kinds of evidence that didn't hit that bar, okay?
Yeah.
On his side, that was excluded. Well, that's the process of justice. You can't point to an aspect of justice applied apparently equally for both sides and then say, well, that's actually against Amber. No. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's continue.
Let's continue.
You were able to get some evidence that you say demonstrated abuse. You certainly had her testimony. There were pictures, documents, all kinds of evidence. But in point of fact, the jury rejected it. You argued in your closing arguments that if they found even one instance of abuse, and it did not even have to be physical abuse, that they would have to find for Amber Heard, and they didn't.
And the other part.
Oh, God.
Okay. One instance of abuse. No, actually, it wasn't even one instance of abuse. That wasn't their argument. And maybe they sort of screwed the pooch by making this argument, which is, if Johnny Depp can't prove he never abused Amber, never,
but they
then
can't.
You have to find for it.
Yeah, but that
Amber.
You can't possibly prove it. You can't prove a negative. So yeah, that was it. They did make that claim though in their closing argument. She did say that Johnny Depp would have to prove that.
Rottenborn.
Oh, it was Rottenborn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they said that he would have to prove that he didn't abuse her, and it's like, but that's not how that works. So, and there wasn't any evidence. Like all of Amber's supposed evidence was what? Like the photos of her bruises that we figured out were probably made with makeup years ago. The stuff that Johnny Depp said to via text to somebody else that Amber Heard never even saw, like the texts to Paul Bettany or him slamming cabinets. Like that's the best stuff they have. That is the best evidence they have, and it's really not great evidence.
No, it's
right?
not great evidence.
So sorry, but they couldn't meet the standard. It is obviously very simple, but they when I say they, I don't just mean Amber's lawyer, who is again just getting her 15 minutes. She wants to be the next Michael Avenatti or something. But it's also more importantly the legacy media, which is siding with her. Again, I think this is because they're just trying to protect the Me Too movement and the narrative. And people are always defending it. Like I have another clip for later if we get to it. Otherwise, I'll do it as an after show thing. Where we'll look at like, a perspective on this which is it's still annoying because it's coming from supposedly our side. But it's overly charitable to Me Too. I don't think Me Too was ever necessary. I thought it was always a bad idea. Fight me if you don't agree. Because, we have systems in place for when people behave badly, and they already favor women. So the hashtags.
Well, all you have to do is think about what would have happened if that recording was surfaced and Amber was a man. It would be over.
Yeah, it would be over.
A 6-year ordeal that Johnny.
It wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
And I have yet to hear a coherent argument against that statement. Anyway, so let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Yeah. Oh, wait, did I read that super chat? Yeah, I already read that one. Okay,
and actually before we do this, sorry guys, sorry to tease you like that. I see that one of the individuals who did that Superchow has canceled. Okay, yeah. It's going through.
All right. Great Indoors was in the chat and said that PayPal asked him for confirmation and his phone is not currently working, so he can't do it. So I don't know if it's some sort of out of our hands.
Yeah, it's out of our hands, but a few have gotten through. Apparently PayPal is being a little bit hinky. All right, so
yeah.
Mrs. Anne of Arc sends us $5 and said, I watched some of these interviews yesterday. You are spot on with your prediction, Brian. And
Oh yeah. Thank you.
okay, you know what men's rights and men's issues advocacy should be called? It's like we're the new Nostradamus. We're always right with our predictions.
It's not hard. It's not hard to do.
No, it's not hard, but the thing is that we look at the whole evidence of what's going on in society. We don't just look at the stuff that people bullhorn into our ears constantly.
If you're looking at the situation for men, honestly, it becomes a lot easier to predict outcomes. And I think that most people just don't. Even if they claim to be critical of feminism, even if they claim to be anti-woke, whatever, if they're not looking at the situation for men, they're not going to be able to accurately assess, where we are. This is what I mean. Like there are plenty of like people who, well, you know what? I don't want to give away the goat now, but we'll get to it. Thank you, Miss Anne of Arc.
Yes.
All right. Sorry.
Also, I just wanted to say one more thing. Maybe that's why we don't get as many viewers. Nobody wants spoilers about the future.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that there are more fair reasons, but I think that mostly it's because we've been like most people who don't toe the line. We're just not getting a lot of visibility. By the way, guys, hit that like button. I see like we've got close to 100 people watching. Hit the like button. It really helps us out because it increases our chances of this stream appearing on someone's like homepage. So if somebody just goes to YouTube and they're looking around, they might see this and they might be interested. They might be interested in this discussion because I think that a lot of people have probably just walked away from the trial now that it's over, and they're just like, okay, that was fun. My understanding is that Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial had more traffic to it than, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which, this is much better. And even though it still has its share of fiction, it's at least more entertaining and believable. So just to show that there is still interest. So help us out. Hit the like button. Appreciate it. All right, let's keep going.
I got one more.
Go ahead.
The Great Endorse finally got his through. It's $5. I don't know how all of this legal stuff works exactly, but could Elaine also be sued for defamation by Depp's team of lawyers following these interviews? Yeah, maybe.
If he wanted to bother with it, he could, but I think he's just gonna.
He'd have to prove, but the thing is, he'd have to prove damages, right?
Yeah, he'd have to prove damages. Right now, they're just talking shit.
Wonderful about talking shit about a man who's basically lost all of his contracts. He can't lose anymore. So Elaine can do whatever she wants to him.
That's true.
So like, there you go. All right, I'm gonna double check to make sure everything's going okay in the back room here. Okay, so
all right.
Fanta, you sent something, and I believe you could probably try again. Sorry about this. I'm not exactly
Fanta,
sure.
like the orange drink? Is that how it's?
No, not Fanti with an E.
You said Fanta.
Yeah. No, it says Fanti. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Fanti?
That's okay. I don't know.
Fanti? I don't know.
Just do your best. It's okay.
Do your best. Try again. Okay. Let's keep going.
All right, let's keep going.
To bear in mind here is nothing changed. The op-ed didn't even mention Mr. Depp by name. And so what basically they did here is demonize her. And they were able to suppress the medical records, which were
a second.
Amber Heard she admitted that she was writing it about him on the stand. There
was very little.
Again, they're playing games. They're hoping that people don't remember or didn't pay attention.
There was very little light between what she said. She basically said, powerful men are promoted by or get all this institutional privilege, even though no matter how powerful Arnold would have been once he admitted to hitting his wife, he'd be out. But there's very little light between saying powerful men do this, and he's a powerful man, and that's why I wrote the op-ed about him. It's like, it's really hard to spin that as her not confessing to having written it about
Yeah.
him and also having written the op-ed. So
Yeah.
it's like, Elaine, your client had confessed on stand, and here you are saying that, Your Honor, or you guys, what really happened was that Johnny Depp's lawyers demonized Amber Heard by holding up a mirror and simply saying, "This is what you just said." And that demonized her. Somehow it's their responsibility. And it's this attitude that I see that in many cases, people who are on the sort of the woke or feminist or social justice ideological end, whatever you want to call it, you will say, "This is what you're doing," and they'll say, you're lying about me. I am
Yeah.
indeed doing that, but
But
what you are doing is a lie because you disagree with me doing it. So everybody agrees that she's doing it, but the fact that Johnny's legal team is saying, "Hey, actually that's bad and criminal, or at least it's actionable. You should not do that." That's what's making that's what's demonizing her. So we
yeah.
all agree that Amber wrote the article. Even Amber agrees that Amber wrote the article. We all agree
And that she
Amber
wrote it about Johnny Depp.
about Johnny Depp. But because some of us think that makes her a demon, or at least her actions actionable, we're the ones who are lying and are wrong. Do you get how that works? And we all agree on what's happened, but because some people don't agree that it should have happened, like we say that shouldn't have happened, she shouldn't have done that, that's actionable, it's a horrible thing to do. We're the ones who are demonizing her.
Yeah.
It works. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I got a super chat from Senior Sticks who says, "But Arnold Heard could have gotten a fair trial?" ? Well, yeah, it's obviously ludicrous. Maybe we should call the male version of Amber Heard Ambro Heard.
Ambro.
Yeah, Ambro.
Ambro.
It's a bit of an unusual, but it's got bro in it, so if it has the word bro in it, I want to use it. The word bro really annoys feminists too, so okay, but anyway, let's hear the rest of this cope stream.
Very significant because they showed a pattern going all the way back to 2012 of Amber reporting this to her therapist, for example. We had significant amount of texts, including from Mr. Depp's assistants, saying, "When I told him he kicked you, he cried."
There was, as far as I know, a significant amount of text. I think they had one of that. And then again, Amber telling her therapist that she was abused. So
Yeah. So it's all hearsay still, right?
Yeah.
This is like, oh man, this is like what happens when Regina George grows up, becomes an adult, and starts working in law.
Oh, actually, you know what? One of the articles that has come out against the verdict actually described Camille as Regina George from Mean Girls.
Yeah, that's what that's like, or the Heathers, like they like, this is what happens when those women become adults. Like, man, you can't sit with us.
Oh, and you should see, like, this is actually sort of angering. You should see how all of these articles are going up and they're speaking for female survivors. And then in the comments, you can see the female survivors like, no, you don't speak for us. You don't speak for us. And then all of these individuals, the so-called advocates, they're like, no, we speak for you. You don't have a voice when we want to speak and we want to protect our narrative. You shut up. You sit down. Be quiet.
Yep.
And it's like, it's actually sort of sickening to watch. Because no matter how many comments are placed by female survivors on these articles, and they're saying, I see my abuser in Amber, and I see myself in Johnny, because to be quite frank, abuse has no gender. Abuse is a behavior, which you can recognize in a man or a woman. They keep silencing them. They keep ignoring them. And
Yeah.
I that must be really difficult to go through as
It,
well as
yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Okay,
Okay.
let's continue.
So sorry. That didn't come in.
Is there any other way to interpret this verdict, though, that this jury, for whatever reason, and I hear you on some of the evidence that they didn't hear, listening to Amber Heard, did not believe a single word?
You know, and that's because she was demonized here. A number of things were allowed in this court that should not have been allowed.
My dog stepped on a bee.
Oh man. It can't be because your client is just comes across as insane and
Well,
also
I mean,
everything-
like, she just
get-
she was so overdoing it on the stand, and while she was sitting there, and people were just seeing through it. I mean, if she had just been objective and just said, you know, what, like, made her case, I don't know, I think that
Okay.
people would have been less critical. But because she's like trying to cry and not pulling it off, and you know, all this other stuff, I think it just makes her look less credible. I don't, you
Well,
know.
also what she's alleging. I mean, I believe that she alleged that she was raped by a Grand Marnier bottle.
Yeah.
Have you seen those things? Like,
Yeah,
way
I
bigger than
know.
bigger than a baby's head. It's like you and then the thing is that if she was and
Yeah.
and then she says, I don't know if it was broken. If that was the case, she wouldn't be walking the next day. She would need medical attention. It's like you can't even take an alleged survivor's testimony and discredit it on the basis of physics. Like, now where are we now? How egregious and bizarre can testimonies get before we say, hey, this needs to relate to what's possible in real life? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And other people have pointed this out as well. It's like, this is a lot of what she said is absurd. And it's verifiably false because it would have left not just, oh, I didn't go get medical attention because I wanted to hide everything, alleged domestic violence survivor, but this is stuff that would literally send someone to the hospital. Okay? Somebody would
Yeah.
have found her bleeding out in her bed and had to take her to the hospital. So this is what makes it the testimony unbelievable. Not because she was demonized, but because it wasn't consistent with reality. You can't make people turn off their understanding of physics on planet Earth every time
No.
a survivor speaks, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you know, you're just gonna have to endure some scrutiny. I mean, when Amber Heard made the initial claim in 2016 that Depp had beaten her, most people just went along with it. And so when Depp was like, you know, I guess nobody believed that, you know, Depp at the time, because it was 2016, the Me Too movement was at its peak. All kinds of men were being accused of things. Most of them probably didn't even try to fight back, you know, or they just prepared, embraced themselves for the, you know, inevitable outcome of just losing their job or whatever. And at the time, if Depp had, like, you know, when he was doing the UK case, he was probably being heavily scrutinized. I think that we were some of the very few people that said, well, let's wait and see what the evidence is. You know, I you know, and just that's all that matters, and leave it at that. So
Yeah, well, the Depp as what is increasingly, or I think it's almost incontrovertible that he was the abuse victim. How much scrutiny did he have to deal with? Like, he's had to deal with 6 years of defamation and demonization. And then she's turning around and saying, oh, well, Depp's lawyers put up a mirror and showed Amber Heard for who she is by simply citing her own words. And that's horrible because not because, you know, she didn't do these things. It's not, problem isn't that Amber Heard hit Johnny Depp and admitted to it. That's not the problem. The problem is that everyone thinks that's bad. And that just shouldn't be the case when you're talking about a woman.
Yep.
Because what should be really salient when you're talking about a woman is, how does Amber Heard feel? Does she feel good about people condemning her for hitting Johnny Depp? Does she? She doesn't feel good. She is a sad, sad puppy. She feels really sad, and that's what's critical. That's what we all need to keep in mind, and that is how we need to decide whether or not it makes Amber Heard happy. And this is honestly the frickin' logic here.
Yeah.
That this is what she's going for. We all need to rearrange reality based on how Amber Heard feels.
Yep.
And I don't know, I think a lot of people recognize that for what it is, because they've experienced that from an abuser. Everything has to be arranged around their emotions and how they feel. And yeah, that's also experience in her own opinion. She's not entitled to invent a world in which the things that she says are physically possible, and then have everybody be forced to believe in that world.
True.
All right.
All right.
And it caused the jury to be confused. We weren't allowed to tell them about the UK judgment. So the damages is completely skewed. There are no damages. It stopped at November 2, 2020, which is when the judgment came down in the UK.
Let me ask you about.
So she's saying that they weren't allowed to mention the UK judgment, and that is one of the reasons why Amber Heard lost, because if they were, she would have won. Now, what would be the reason that the judge would say, you know, you can't bring up the UK judgment? I mean, my thinking is that they're basically saying, well, that has nothing to do with this case. And that could potentially bias the jury, because if they hear that, because if they hear, well, he already did this and lost, which is how the lawyers will present it for sure, then they're going to be like, well, I guess he should lose then. And, you know, but the truth is that case, and again, they're just going to beat this into the ground. Like, the UK case is going to be their go-to for from now on, right? Oh, well, UK justice system is better than the United States because in the UK, you know, survivors can come forward and we can essentially just throw men in jail, which in a way is true. Like, in the UK, they have crazy ass laws against like misogyny and staring at women, and which will get men arrested, and not just in like Nottinghamshire or whatever.
Well, whoa. I have been informed. Britain, not UK, because there's no overall.
Britain, the United Kingdom. Britain, just Britain. Sorry.
Yes,
Get those three places mixed up: England, Britain, and the UK. But anyway, they're calling it the UK case here, but yeah, Britain. So, you know, it's a silly place. They have
It's just a silly place.
Yeah, they have a queen.
Okay.
Let's not go there. It's a silly place.
The other thing is that there's additional precedent for the British courts excluding exculpatory evidence, at least when it comes to, and I guess this is also a trial for sexual assault. They are now being investigated for having excluded evidence of innocence in a number of sexual assault trials. Thus, those trials have been invalidated, and they've had to be investigated for bias against men who are accused of sexual assault. So the British court systems, we already know that they're biased against men who are accused of sexual assault. So it's entirely possible that bias came into play in this. Why not?
Yep.
It's
and
there,
again,
there.
Yeah, Depp's evidence wasn't accepted. That's the main reason why he lost, I think, in the UK trial. So, you know, of course, what she's saying is that the UK trial should set precedent, which also means Depp's evidence should not have been submitted in Virginia either. Really, I mean, by that logic, right? If people are basing their judgment on the evidence as it was allowed to be presented in Britain when they did this back in, when was that, like 2020? Then yeah, because that's the one that Depp lost. Then they're basically also saying that the same exact standard should be held in the United States, which would have probably guaranteed that Depp would lose, because if it weren't for those recordings, I mean, I think that's honestly what saved his ass. Like, you would have to hear a woman tell you to your face that she is using the system against you and that she doesn't fear reprisal. On a recording, it's literally like, you know, what you might see in like a cartoon or a movie where, you know, the investigative journalist gets a recording that condemns the corrupt politician or whatever, and then plays it on like the radio and everyone sees it and the guy is like booed off the stage and they throw tomatoes at him. You know, like Batman Returns. It's like the only way, you know, you would, and they literally had that, and it was still, I think anyway, pretty close. It was still pretty close.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I just wanted to send you this because this is going to be a great, I think, topper for the end of this.
All right.
Hopefully you can play it at the end.
Yeah, I'll go click on it later. Let's play the rest of this then.
About social media in this case. Unlike any celebrity.
So now they're going to blame social media. And,
okay, but here's the question.
Okay.
Here's my question. All right, she's going to blame social media, but she's just gone through and said that the judge excluded all of this evidence of innocence. Well, guess what's circulating on social media? Any evidence that's excluded from the trial.
Yeah.
So the public doesn't just get what the jury sees, the evidence in the trial. The public, and I've seen this, I've seen people showing the UK verdict, showing the text, showing all of this other stuff at all of the threads where they're talking about Johnny Depp. So the public has access to even more evidence than the people in the trial do, the jury does. And they have access to all the evidence that Elaine has been talking about. And they have gone through all of the evidence that Elaine is talking about that was excluded. And they still come to the decision that Amber was the abusive party. So when she says that it is social media that's a problem, how? Like,
social media is not a person with opinions. Well, it's just a tool that people use.
It's a tool to distribute information.
Yes.
That isn't necessarily being seen in the trial.
Yes.
Like they've been distributing all of the people who stand for Amber Heard, and even people just like, I don't know what's going on, let me look at everything, have been distributing that information on social media and been looking at it. And now she's saying social media is the problem. Well, social media had the information that you are upset about having been excluded from the trial.
Well, yeah, but she's making the argument that social media is the problem, I think, in part. And I think this is why the legacy media supports this, because they want to control social media. And so they're going to use, I think, obviously they don't want people sharing their opinions or their thoughts online unless those thoughts coincide with their beliefs.
Yeah, I know.
And so they ultimately just want to control the conversation.
But what I'm saying is that what she's saying is completely disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because if the jury, actually, you know what? I will let her continue. I'll let you.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Because, the jury they weren't able, they were sequestered or something, right?
Well,
so they wouldn't.
She's going to say something more.
Let's hear.
The case certainly I've ever covered or ever seen, social media was a part of this. And it was incredibly lopsided and vitriolic against Amber Heard. Do you think that had an effect on the case?
Absolutely.
You think jurors were aware of it? They weren't supposed to be. They're admonished every single day. Don't look at it. Do you think they did see it?
How can you not? They went home every night. They
have
families.
What the soft, look at these softballs this interviewer
I know.
handing her. She's just like, just not even throwing the ball. She's just like, here, hit it out of my hand. And Elaine is barely making a swing, and she's going poof, poof, Oh, you got it. You got it. It's not even freaking softballs. These are just like fed on a platter. No. You've just gotten through saying that there's all kinds of evidence excluded from the jury trial. Well, if it was, and it was, it would have been shared all over the social media. And like I said, everybody on social media has been looking through everything, including the stuff that was excluded from the trial. So you're saying that social media influenced this trial, and at the same time, you're saying that the trial was bad because all of the information that was circulating, that would be circulating on social media, was excluded. Like,
Yeah.
like it's no, can't have it both ways.
I see in the chat people are saying that the jury wasn't sequestered. Well, which I figured out when this woman said that they did go home. But it doesn't really matter. I don't think, because of course they're going to try and make the claim that this is going to have influence, but I don't know if it matters, because as long as they stick to, I mean, there are plenty of Heard supporters on social media too. So, you know, they could have been exposed to both sides. I don't know.
Yeah, there are.
There are. I mean, they look at it from a different perspective. They're like, you know, well, it's more important that we preserve. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I keep interrupting. This is what I'm trying to get at. She's simultaneously saying that the courtroom was biased because it excluded certain aspects of Amber's evidence. But social media was also biased because it excluded no evidence, and everybody was talking about everything in this trial. So which is it? Like none of her evidence that she said was excluded unfairly from the trial was excluded on social media. They were all talking about it. It was all being brought up. It was all being refuted. So which is it? Okay. Is the fact that there was a gate for evidence in the trial the problem, or the fact that there was no gate for evidence in the social media the problem?
Yep. Well, it's a good question. I don't think she has an answer, though.
No, of course not. And of course, this interviewer is not even going to ask a question like that. Why don't you be consistent here, Elaine? Which is it? Because if there was evidence excluded from the trial that was absolutely, like, totally exonerated Amber Heard, that would have been all over social media. Don't be silly. Okay.
All right, let's keep going.
The families are on social media. We had a 10-day break in the middle because of the judicial conference. There's no way they couldn't have been influenced by it. And it was horrible. It really, really was lopsided. And I appreciate your saying that. It's like the Roman Colosseum, you know, how they viewed this whole case. I was against cameras in the courtroom, and I went on record with that and had argued against it because of the sensitive nature of this. But it made...
Really? I thought that it was Amber Heard's team that wanted it televised.
Amber Heard? No.
Amber Heard. Sorry, I just
I know
misspoke.
that was an accidental slip of the tongue. No, they didn't want it televised.
Oh, they didn't. Oh, okay.
The judge said, "I'm going to televise this," just threw it out to the public. Thank God for that. And Johnny Depp's team was like, "Okay, do it." And the other team was like, "No, we don't want that. We don't want this publicized." Despite the fact that all of this evidence that we had was excluded, therefore, if we publicized it, people might actually find out that evidence that was so exonerating to Amber Heard and start promoting it on social media.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. People are saying that it was Johnny Depp's team that wanted it televised. Well, that's good, because they, you know, the world should have seen it. And I think that's good. So I wish that we could have done that with, you know, we could do that with Ghislaine Maxwell, but it's they're different rules there. So, all right. Anyway,
at a zoo.
Does your client want to appeal?
Oh, absolutely. And she has some excellent grounds for it. We even had tried to get the UK judgment in to dismiss his case because he already had his shot. And that's one of the issues, but also a number of the evidentiary issues. There was so much evidence that did not come in.
Is she able to pay a $10.4 million judgment?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Get Jason Momoa on the phone. Where's James Franco right now? He was riding high on the hog some years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, should I just keep going, or do you want to say something to that? So they are going to file an appeal.
Of course.
Obviously, of course, yeah,
I
of
don't
course.
think they really she's going to have to prove that there was some kind of bias by the judge when it comes to the standard that she set for evidence. And I don't think they can prove that. That's just my opinion. I've actually grilled a lot of the supporters of Amber Heard, or at least the ones that have come on my radar on this issue. Can you prove that when Johnny Depp presented, or his team presented evidence that didn't get over that bar, that the judge actually said, "Oh no, we'll let that in"? And if you can't, then you can't prove bias. Essentially, what happened was the judge applied a filter equally to both sides. And she's complaining that that filter was applied equally to Amber's evidence as it was to Johnny's. And unless she can prove that it wasn't applied equally, then she's not going to have grounds on that for. I don't know what else she might have.
Well, this could just all be for the publicity.
Yeah.
Like they may know they really can't overturn this, but if they try and it fails, which it probably will, they can claim more patriarchal, institutionalized misogyny, which will get them benefits in other ways. You know, like I mean, that's what I believe. I think that ultimately, if you can't win, play the victim. And if you're a woman, you'll be fine. You'll be taken care of, and it might even reinforce your delusions. So, you know, okay, I think there's like 30 seconds left or less.
Yep.
So let's see.
Finally, in closing arguments, Amber's team argued that this would send a message, that it would send a message that no matter what you do as an abuse victim, you always have to do more. You need to be perfect in order for people to believe you if she did not get a favorable verdict. What message do you think this sends?
It's a horrible message. It's, as I said, a setback. It's a significant setback because that's exactly what it means. Unless you pull out your phone and you video your spouse or your significant other beating you, effectively.
Okay, but here's the thing: when you pull out your phone, and what you're videoing or you're recording is you admitting to beating your significant other, you know that might.
Was that Amber that was recording that, or was that Johnny?
Well, it was mutually agreed upon recording for
yeah.
marriage counselor. Although I'm surprised the marriage counselor wasn't just like, "Johnny, come here." No. We'll be leaving the room. Escape now. The fire escape is over there. Go, please run.
Yeah.
Get yourself out of
this. But whammon.
But yes, I know. It's like, and the thing is that she isn't doing anything for women.
No.
Like literally saying that all women are going to be destroyed if Amber Heard is found as a liar. No, absolutely not. Women's fate shouldn't be tied to what is looking to be a psychotic, narcissist liar. Like, why would you do that? Why would you throw Amber Heard is now being condemned. Why would you say, well, that means all women are? Why would you do that? And just say this woman doesn't represent all women. Okay? She represents herself and possibly also narcissistic abusers. Okay? That's who she represents.
Yep.
Saying that because we're pointing out that she's bad means that we're pointing out that all women are bad. No. That's what you're doing. And it's totally like, it has nothing to do with other women. And it has nothing to do with women who are telling the truth about the abuse they face. Also, get this. Women are also often subject to false accusations by other women. Look at the Salem witch trials. Who do you think was actually accusing these women of being witches? Other women. Okay, so there's a long history of women being destroyed by false accusations by other women. It's in women's interest to pursue due process and justice and evidence before the law. That's in women's interests. Protecting a narcissistic abuser just because she's a woman Not in women's interest. Is it in Amber's female victim's interest that we defend her? No. Whose interest is this? Except the interest of people who find the narrative that women are
The interest of
victims.
abusers.
Yeah, it's in the interest of abusers, and it's the interest of people who want to maintain a narrative. Like, literally, they're less interested in the stories and the dynamics of abuse, of real abuse, and the evidence of real abuse, which would help survivors. They're less interested in that than they are in maintaining an ideological narrative that supports their beliefs about the world and their power base and their monetary income. So it's like, and again, I'm watching these individuals who say they're advocates for female survivors talking over actual female survivors who's saying, no, I see my abuser in Amber and I see myself in Depp. This is what they do. They don't care.
Yep.
They don't care about your experience. They
Yep.
don't care about the dynamic of abuse. They don't care about any evidence. All they care about is that you, as a female survivor, support their narrative. That's it. They don't care about you. They don't care about the abuse you suffered. They don't care about silencing your voice. All they care about is that you exist to support their narrative. And when they put the narrative first, they actually are putting abuse survivors last, male and female.
Yep.
Ugh. And you can watch it happening in real time now with these individuals and what they're saying and what they're doing and the fact that they're talking over actual survivors. I sent you a letter from actual survivors, female
Oh, yeah.
survivors of domestic assault and domestic abuse and sexual violence, who are saying, you guys don't speak for us. You know, and the only place where they're going to get heard is social media, the very social media that Elaine is condemning. And bizarrely, too, because simultaneously she's saying, well, all this evidence is excluded from the trial. Well, this evidence is more likely to be available on social media. And yet people who are the jury of the trial said Amber is guilty, and social media with greater access to more evidence, including the evidence she said was excluded, said what? Amber Heard is guilty. So she's got nothing to stand on here.
Nope.
In her condemnation of social media, nothing at all. The only thing that, and the only reason why this is because, let's get frank here, corporate media is terrified of the fact that social media exposes their lies.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's why they want to control it. They want to, because there are people that are basically dissenting, and they have a narrative to maintain.
Can we get her last seconds of statement?
Yeah, we got to the end of the whole thing.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's video clips underneath it, but I think they're just segments from the full length one we listened to, or at least the 5-minute one, because the other ones are like 20 seconds. So
yeah, I'm gonna double check.
Yeah, sure.
Fancy, please give it a try. If not, I will just read your comment. Let's see. Okay, I'm just gonna read Fanty's comment.
Sure.
I'll hope he'll just try to get that $5 in later, because I feel bad that he made so much effort. He tried twice. Okay, so it says, nope, send a message to the Badgers. Brian, please read this message. Okay.
Well,
Wow.
I can't look at it because
I screwed that up. All right, let me see if there's another message on this failed one. And again, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Apparently PayPal decided to be irritable.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, send a message to the Badgers. Okay, this one I can read. Please read this message angrily.
Okay.
I don't know if okay.
No, I mean, I don't know if I'm convinced of how angry that was, but you read it with a loud voice, so maybe that's enough.
It's hard for me to turn on anger. I'd have to just imagine like Big Red shouting down men who are upset at suicide or something.
Yeah.
It has to. I have to actually be angry at something to project anger. So I'm not angry at you,
No,
Fanti.
it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so the Prit of Truth gives us $10 and says, quite funny how most people taking Amber's side or both sides in chat for the Depp streams were men. That's not really funny. Men have, okay, I'm going to be honest, men have pretty powerful instincts when it comes to protect women. You know how women respond to, like, infants crying? Men do that for women. So as soon as a woman starts shrieking, it's like, oh, I got to do something to stop her from being in danger. It's probably why women continue to exist on this earth. Because I can
Truth.
only imagine what it would be like if men didn't have those instincts.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Don't shoot the messenger and accept that women are humans too, and humans can be evil. Being a white knight is worth nothing when you are the target of an evil woman. Well, yeah, and that's what a lot of these abusive women will do is they'll. And this is something that I noticed that maybe other people didn't pick up when I was listening to the tapes of Johnny Depp. She said to
Yeah.
him, "I thought you weren't like the other men." And I'm like, "Oh God." Yeah, if you're with a woman who says crap like that, get the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
Get out. Because that says a lot more about her than it does about other men in her life in many ways.
Yeah.
And the idea that he had to live up to, and this is what it is. He had to live up to whatever horrible view, or live out, or live above, or overcome whatever horrible views she had of men. Yeah, you're never going to be able to do that.
Yep.
Essentially what will happen is that she'll be enamored with you for a while, and then your flaws will come out, because everyone has flaws. And I don't mean flaws like beating or being abusive. I mean flaws like being a slob, or maybe having substance abuse issues, which, are not great, but if you're trying to deal with them, that's different. Or, you don't make as much money, or you lose your job, or whatever happens. And then suddenly you are one of the bastards who didn't live up to her expectations. And often those women who say stuff like that have unbelievable expectations that you are going to fix them, simultaneously with making it impossible to help them at all. It's just, don't do it. Okay.
All right. Any other
Don't
oh, go ahead.
Being a white knight is worth nothing when you're the target of an evil woman. Okay. The feeling Prit, another $10. The mainstream is upset that trial is not being decided based on emotions, but on evidence. You can control feelings. You cannot control the facts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, in particular, because if they had like all of the evidence on their side and could condemn Depp or whatever, then they would side with the evidence in that case. But this is simply just not the result they wanted, and they're flailing because of it. That people treat Johnny Depp with any degree of discernment with regards to the evidence that he was finally able to release, and that's what makes them mad. He shouldn't. Yeah. Men should not be able to do that. That's all this is.
Like, how could she simultaneously condemn the jury trial for not having the evidence, and then condemn the social media quote unquote jury, when it had all the evidence and still came to the same conclusion?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. This is all that they're going to accept is.
Yeah, they're just protecting the narrative.
All they're going to accept is capitulation.
Yeah, that's all. That's exactly right. And again, there have been several articles that have been written about it, and they're going to keep coming. They're basically going to bombard us with, he lost the UK trial. This is going to be setting a dangerous precedent for women. Women are going to be more afraid to come forward against their abusers and all this other stuff. And it's all emotional manipulation. It's not based in reality. And you have to stay like rational and just say, look, men can also be abused. This case proves that, and yet he had to fight tooth and nail to like eke out a victory. And I'm not even, because he ended up having to pay, I think, some to Heard as well. It wasn't even like that absolute, you know. It was still a bit compromising. So, and I think that was just like the jury saying, all right, let's throw her a bone. But I don't know. So, but that's what this is going to be about. And, just like Alison said, once like the initial like high, I guess, of like seeing that Depp, won and got justice, once that's passed, these people are going to continue to drive home this narrative until their version of reality has been, until it's the only one, and they are satisfied that enough people agree with it, and that will be like what their goal is, essentially just bombard people with thought pieces until they accept. I mean, think about, who chimed in on this was Anita, right? Anita Sarkeesian.
Chimed in on it. Yep.
Yeah. Let me see if I can, because I think you sent it to me.
Yeah, I've been sending you a lot of stuff.
I know.
See me in the background. I'm like just.
She's
Brian.
constantly dropping things in here. But Anita commented, and again, it doesn't surprise me because this is what is going on. I would bet that if you went on Twitter and looked up every well-known feminist, like some of the Heather Antos, Rebecca Watson, and Rebecca Watson actually made a video about this, and she was doing the usual, she's on the same side. They're all on the same side. You look up any prominent feminist, and I guarantee you they have at least tweeted about, if not wrote something or blogged or made a video about how Johnny Depp was, there was unfair bias, patriarchal bias in favor of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And that usually starts with the whole thing is a shit show. Like, that's how they started. They say, oh, well, it's just celebrity BS, and it's the Roman Colosseum, the bread and circuses. They always started with that, but then if you keep listening, they inevitably land on Johnny Depp and all men are guilty, and Amber Heard should not have suffered any penalties. So it's, even when they say ma both sides, it's not really ma both sides. Like, it doesn't usually turn out that way. So, because
I'm smiling because it's actually hilarious to watch, and it's not really watching, but just read how they managed to just sort of like, they're like, okay, this is reality, both sides, because she had admitted to abuse, and now we're just going to massage it, massage, do a little dance, nuance. Oh, she was the abuse victim. The end. Bye.
Yep.
They just do the tap dance with the cane off the stage.
Yep. The big giant crook comes in and pulls them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The big gorilla hand. But yeah, that's what it's going to be. So, and I don't, you know what? Can you send me Anita's comments? Should we look at them, or do you want to hear like the one I was telling you about? With the Lotus Eaters. Okay. So
okay, yeah, we can just hear the comments.
Yeah, it's very short. It's a very short clip. And I just want you to see the framing of this. That's why it bothered me a lot, because I normally like the Lotus Eaters content, but some of them, because they don't all believe the same things, right? So I'm not throwing shade at the whole channel. But some of them seem to be like strangely unaware of how much we've been lied to about the dynamic between men and women. Okay. So let me play this. This guy on the left is Leo Kearse, I think I hope I'm not butchering that. He's a Scottish comedian. Normally, I don't mind his content. I get that he's supposed to be bringing levity to the videos and things like that. That's sort of like his purpose. But this got under my skin.
Against Harvey Weinstein and I think Rose McGowan.
So he's explaining the Me Too movement and how it started, okay?
was the first one to actually, burst open and say, "Look, I was abused by Harvey Weinstein." It was an essential movement in a way, because men had just been treating women terribly for probably as long as there's been men and women. I bet even.
What?
That's what I'm saying. Do you see? And I know that he's like normally critical of feminism. Okay, he's normally critical of these things. But when you say shit like this, you give feminists all the power and authority in the world. Okay, there is no evidence that men have ever done this. None. Like this, I saw someone else. Carl had this girl on, and they were talking about the well, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna leave this alone. I'll bring that other thing up another time when it's more appropriate. But it was the same thing. It was basically like, how can we blame men for this? And I'm just like, you're never gonna fix anything if the only thing you do is think that men always have the worst intentions for women. You will never fix anything. You have no idea what motivates men to do what they do. And all you can do is just jump and say, I think the Me Too movement started in earnest. No, it didn't. If Rose McGowan didn't go to the cops when this happened, then she's completely invalid. Period. Like, are women not capable? If Harvey Weinstein shows up and offers a woman a job in exchange for sexual favors, are those women incapable of saying no and then going to the authorities? Apparently they aren't capable of doing that, because everyone seems to think, well, he had a position of power or whatever. I don't agree. Everybody has free will, so they should act on that.
That's a point. Now, having said that, I'm not that inclined to defend Harvey Weinstein. I actually really want to drill down on men have been behaving badly for.
That's fine. I think that's the more salient point.
That's the more salient point. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous. And you are maligning your ancestors. You're maligning the men who died in World War I and in many cases were shamed to go by women. Okay? Like, feminism, I keep repeating this. Feminism did not invent men caring about women. If you think feminism invented men caring about women, I don't know what to say to you. They didn't.
Well, exactly. And of course, you can make this claim that men have been shitty to women for as long as there have been men and women, which is like a really condemning thing to say. But of course, if I press you on it and I say, does that include you? You'll say, oh, no, not me. I'm not one of those men. I'm the good man. Right?
And do you think
you're unusual or unique in some way? Like, of course.
You think, and women haven't, like, okay. This whole narrative that men are somehow oppressive towards women or have behaved badly towards women needs to die.
Yes.
And strangely enough, I'm going to take you on a little bit of to my own brain, which hopefully will come back. When I got a dog, okay, I started to realize how absolutely ridiculous this narrative is. And I know that sounds sort of like totally out of left field, but I got this dog. All right. Dog is a descendant of a wolf. Wolves have eaten humans and preyed upon them. So a dog is a descendant of an animal that ate us. And this dog wants to please us. He wants to do right by us. He wants to protect us. He wants to make us happy. And we did that. Human beings did that through selective breeding over 20,000 years. Women have been applying evolutionary pressure through their mate choices on men for 1 million years. And you're telling me that they couldn't construct a creature that at the very least wanted to please them the way we have constructed a dog from an animal that wanted to eat us into something that obeys us? Are you telling me that human females are the gigantic losers of the social mammal sphere? Because every other social mammal has managed to put evolutionary pressure on male mammals to protect them and where they need provision to provide for them. Okay? So stallions will insert themselves between a predator and the herd. Male wolves will protect and provide the female wolves during pregnancy and gestation, and also protect the territory.
Yeah.
And then there are avian males provide for the females and help raise the off. You're telling me 1 million freaking years and human women, all they could come up with was assholes who still don't care about them and I'm not saying that there are none, but they are a minority of men.
Yeah, and
the
also
reality is
sometimes women select for those guys.
Well, they select for them, but those men still have a concern and affection for them all. So what they want is, and it's a particular type of woman too. It tends to be more rough, shall we say. But regardless, that's an aside. You telling me that we could create a creature that used to eat us and make it into something that wants to please us, and women couldn't do the same with a million years of evolutionary pressure? It's ridiculous. And in fact, the reason why we are such a successful species is because men so much want to provide and protect for women that they are willing and able and highly motivated to cooperate with each other to construct societies, these gigantic termite mounds with women in the center being provided and protected for. Where do you think it comes from? Okay, this is absurd. This entire narrative is absurd, and it's gross. And really needs to end because we're going nowhere.
That, you know, and I know that Leo Kearse is or Hearse, I'm not sure. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, he's a comedian. Sometimes he just says things to see what, you know, how people might react. But I think that to make the claim that men have historically been shitty to women, it's not really something that strikes you as a joke, because it doesn't have like, it doesn't subvert what people are expecting you to say, because most people believe that. Most people, the average person, believes that right up until the 1960s, men have treated women like garbage.
Okay,
and
well, actually, how does this
and even now, how does this relate to the trial? Well, because the video was ultimately about the response to the trial. So that video was about that, and essentially what was at stake. What was at stake, according to most articles or many articles written about the results of the trial, is the Me Too movement, right? So that's why he got on a little bit of a discussion about the Me Too movement, and he made a defense of the Me Too movement in the beginning by saying, oh, well, I think that, you know, it was a good thing in the beginning, but it never was. Like, in my opinion, and that's not even, I don't see how you could make the argument that claiming the Me Too movement started in earnest is a joke. I think that it is, again, go to a normal person on the street, ask them about the Me Too movement, even if they disagree with it, even if they hate the Me Too movement, they'll probably start by saying, well, it probably started off with good intentions. So this is not like a subversive thing to say. This is like a normal opinion, right? And so, okay. So because the thing that's real quick though, because the thing that's truly at stake here with the Johnny Depp Amber Heard results is the narrative around domestic abuse, and by extension, the Me Too movement. Because remember, Amber Heard was the face of Me Too when, you know, when the allegations, when she wrote her op-ed for the Washington Post, that story became the center, right? And the reason is obviously political and financial. It was because the Me Too movement was trying to craft and enforce and push a narrative about domestic abuse and about sexual abuse, because remember, Amber Heard claimed Johnny Depp sexually assaulted her as well. And that narrative is like rooted in the central belief system of Me Too. I mean, like, even when one man, or at least like one prominent man, Terry Crews, came forward during the Me Too movement, he was celebrated and everything. Everybody's like, oh, it's so good to see a man come. But what did they do? What was the narrative around his, you know, coming forward? What was the narrative? Toxic masculinity. What does that mean? It's his fault. So, and it's all men's fault. Why is that? Because the narrative around men and women is more important than the truth. So if a man comes forward, it's toxic masculinity that kept him from doing it. All men should, be aware of their male privilege and their toxic masculinity. And if a woman does, we just have to believe them, full stop. Believe women, period. Right? And I'm saying that there are people who claim to be rational that still buy into these, let's say,
narratives?
they're like presumptions. So there's like if you hear an accusation from a woman that she's been assaulted or something, right? The first response should be, if she's doing this on social media, the very first response should be, did you go to the police? And what's the evidence? But it's not.
Well, she's doing it in the context of blaming someone, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, if she points the finger at somebody.
If she's in some kind of survivor support thread, maybe not.
Yeah, it depends, but what I'm saying is that if people, that we do have an instinct to just give women the benefit of the doubt, and that means that women can.
What you're saying, this is what I'm getting out of what you're saying. All right, so Leo has said men have treated women badly through X amount of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we needed Me Too to correct that. And then, oh my God, it was overcorrected with Johnny Depp. But we keep doing this over and over and over again. Me Too wasn't the first movement like this.
No.
And it keeps finding victims. And the reason why it keeps finding victims is because it prioritizes accusations over evidence.
Right.
And do that. Eventually you are going to destroy someone. And Johnny Depp happened to be the one who was destroyed this time. But we can't get into another cycle of this. We need to stop it and start recognizing that evidence trumps accusations.
Yes. But there's I guess what I was trying to draw attention to is the fact that if you start your thought process by saying men have treated women like shit for this amount of time, then you're already in the wrong.
Yeah.
And you're
already justifying Depp being treated by shit.
Exactly. You're already allowing the narrative to control you to some degree, because even if you say, well, I don't believe Amber Heard, but you're kind of saying, right, I think that there are women out there, and a lot of them, and the majority of them, or whatever, right? So it's and if you take on that initial presumption that men would do this if they were allowed to, then you're already in the wrong. It doesn't matter what you think about this individual. Yeah, and it doesn't matter what you think about this individual case, because you accept that as a general rule, this is true. And that it makes it impossible to talk about, because now basically all men have to prove themselves innocent. And that doesn't make sense, because we're supposed to assume innocence. But it's probably really hard for people to accept that women can lie. Women can manipulate the system. Women know that the system can be exploited for their personal gain. If you look
many
at
women do.
many women know that exactly. And the narrative again is the real enemy here. It's the Duluth model. It's not Amber Heard. And the media knows that. That's why they're defending her, and they're gonna use this case to essentially push that forward. And I think that they're also operating under the Duluth model as though it's true to do that.
Yeah. So essentially, this whole construct that men are somehow inherently abusive and destructive towards women, which Leo is presenting here, is this idea. Well, and somebody said he's being a devil's advocate. I don't know. Maybe he is. He's presenting this idea that men are destructive and abusive towards women almost innately. So by saying, oh, we've been getting away with it too long, or we've been doing this too long. No, you haven't. Are you really going to define men more by the tiny minority of criminal men who have severe impulse control problems, plus they have been abused in the past? You're going to define men by those men, Or are you going to define men by the men who build houses for their families? You know, my father's husband, or no, my father's husband. Oh, man, that was really fucked up. Okay, scrub that. Let me start
Whoa.
over. My husband's father.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Your father-in-law. You could just say that.
My father-in-law built a house for his family. You know, he's provided for his family his entire life. Provided for them materially, his money, he supported them in his entire life. My father provided for his family, and this is not unheard of throughout history. The ability to construct, like, a city doesn't exist without men wanting to provide for their wives and children. Why do you think men are working? Why do you think men do these dangerous jobs? Why do you think men put themselves out there and do shit like go through sewers? Because they want to provide for their families, for the women in their life. Okay. And why do men go and try to protect their nations and try to protect their tribes by going out and going into war and dying? Because they care about their elders, they care about the women, they care about the children in their groups. You know, this is the greatest action that men have taken, which is to sacrifice for the benefit of women and children and elders. That's what men do. Okay. That's what they should be defined by, not by the tiny minority of abused and mentally distorted individuals who engage in criminal activity. And the fact is that this Leo is defining men by a minority of men who, can we even really call them men when they don't have adult impulse control? They're still in a juvenile state and they have been abused and they're acting out that abuse. Are we going to define men by them? Or are we going to define men by the tremendous amount of sacrifice, work, and effort that men have put into throughout all of human history to construct societies where women can enjoy lives of relative leisure and relative peace and relative prosperity? Are we going to do that? Because it is wrong. It is 100% wrong. And I use an example to describe this. There are more men out there saving lives in fires than there are men murdering by an order of something like 200. And yet, what do feminists choose to focus on? What do most normies choose to focus on? What does Leo choose to focus on? He chooses to focus on the tiny minority of men that are in any way dangerous to anyone, instead of the vast majority of men and their efforts to construct a safe, productive society for everyone. And that is absolutely 100% wrong. It is it's a demonization. I'm going to use Elaine's word. It's a demonization of men. And that demonization of men leads to things like Johnny Depp's situation. Yep. Because when we remove presumption of innocence from all men, we remove presumption of innocence from one man. And that one man happened to be Johnny Depp in this instance. Okay.
All right. Well, anyway, that was the thing I wanted to share. My purpose for doing that is it is relevant because, again, like I said, the media is not trying to protect Heard. They're trying to protect the Me Too movement. They're trying to protect the Duluth model. They're trying to protect the narrative around, the, let's say, antagonistic relations between men and women and women and men. And I think that has to die. It has to, because otherwise we're just going to get another allegation sometime in the future. And we're going to do this whole thing all over again. And it's because we accept as a precedent ridiculous ideas about the way men have treated women throughout history. If men didn't treat women like with reverence and by protecting them and providing for them, we wouldn't be here. Like, we just wouldn't be here. We'd have all died off. So that's, it's just an absurd thing to even presume it. That's why it doesn't work as like a devil's advocate thing. By the way, the other guy doesn't actually counter argue. He just sort of lets that go. So to some degree, they're probably willing to accept that as a reality. And I think that what they mean by men treating women badly is like, you know, they didn't have the vote and they were excluded from getting jobs, the things that everyone assumes, but it's not true. You know, women have always been able to work. Women have always been a part of the workforce. Women have always been, they've always been involved in politics. There was none of that's true, at least in the West, you know? So, all right, I got a super chat from Albert Nada. I want to read really quick. He gives us $5 Canadian and says, looks like in the real world, Gone Girl had a happy ending. Well, it's not over yet. So, but thank you.
All right, so I think we're done with the super chows. I think you should watch that video that I sent you. You should.
All right.
You should just show it. Hopefully, it doesn't cause. It's a meme, so it shouldn't.
Well, I gotta go in and then click it. Is this the video with Elaine? All right.
No, yeah, it is.
Fought hard and lost that.
Oh, geez, I gotta.
Oh, okay. I'll just cover. This is what we need, like, music for, you know, like a little bit.
No. It's up. I got it up. I just needed to make sure that it's displaying on the correct screen. Just give me a second here. All right, let's take a look.
Fought hard and lost that battle. So it should not have happened.
I am a former NFL player, and after a hard loss, it's easy to wake up and point to the other side. Oftentimes, I realized the better thing to do was to look in the mirror.
You see, I told you.
That's good.
That's good. Oh man, and this is
Thank
the other
God
thing.
for athletes that actually take responsibility for their personal failings.
She doesn't want to take responsibility for having a terrible client, and sort of representing her terribly. Like Camille's closing argument is almost Elaine's closing argument is almost universally regarded as incoherent mess, except by like true believers. So there you go. Like she can't take the L. I see that Rottenborn is an L. He's probably like, oh God, I need to purge. I need to spiritually purge.
I mean, he did what he could, but like he was just like I would imagine that he just accepted his L. He just took the L and just, you know, just crept back into his cave or whatever.
Well, you know, he was actually competent as a lawyer. I would ardently argue that Elaine was, but that's the guy working the Sigma grind set. Is that how you refer to it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I think again, like professional athletes, that like one of the things they have to basically be like, okay, I lost, but am I going to blame, you know, him or her or those people or that institute? No, I'm going to basically be like, okay, it was me. It was something that I wasn't doing. This is something I've read about with not just athletes, but, you know, soldiers, cops, like, you know, in that are good at their job. You know, if there's something that goes wrong, they have been taught to essentially think, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Well, how do I change this? Because if you don't think that you can do anything and that it's some external thing that's not in your control, how can you possibly improve? There's like nothing to work on. So I think that's what he's saying, you know.
This whole concept of patriarchy and male privilege is probably one of the reasons why we achieve as much as they could. Because if you can always make an excuse, then you never do the work. All right. Yeah. I think that I want to thank everybody for sending in those super chows. Once again, if you want to send us a tip, it's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And we will get that. You can send it in at any point in time, and we will get it and endeavor to read it on the next stream. And I'm going to send it back to you, Brian, unless you have some final thoughts.
No, I got to wrap it up because I got to go pick Lindsay up soonish. So if you guys like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications or whatever the equivalent is if you're like not following us on this particular, you know, our YouTube channel, but you're like on Rumble or Facebook or Twitter or what's the other one? DLive. And leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show. And most importantly, please share this video because it really helps us out. It helps us reach more people. And, you know, I just think that these are important conversations that people are not thinking about into the same depth that I want to get people thinking about it, which is the reason why, by the way, I brought up that Loaded Cedars video, because those guys normally do really good work. And I say this with all due respect. I love Sargon, met him a couple times, and his team is good at what they do, but there are still some blind spots, and then I'm going to point them out, you know, if they come up. So anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.